Okay, cool. We're go. So hi guys. I'm not sure who's joined us yet. It actually doesn't tell me who's. So if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat, that would be awesome. And then I can know who's here, whether it's our club members or staff or anybody like that. My name is Alexandra, and I am from Woodford Cedar Run. Erin is not here with us yet, just so you guys know. And this is Ben Wurst from Conserve Wildlife, New Jersey. Happy to have him here with us tonight. I've been really looking forward to this the whole time. So nobody's introduced themselves yet, but I do see that 5 people are here.
Not just us anymore.
It's not, no, it's not just us anymore. Oh, Bridget and Amber are two
We're
of
not
our,
alone.
yeah. So we have two of our super experienced volunteers, Bridget and Amber, and one of our staff members, Jim, is also saying he's
Awesome.
present. So hopefully some other people will announce themselves. They don't have to if they're not comfortable. But yeah, so Ben Wurst is from Conserve Wildlife, New Jersey, and he conducts research on several different species within the state, mostly raptors, as we were just discussing. And I will turn it over to you and just explain to us what it is that you do exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for having me. This is my first webinar. I'm getting used to using all these different streaming platforms here that I've never heard of before, like Webinar Ninja and Zoom and Google Meet. But yeah, so my name is Ben Wurst. I'm the Habitat Program Manager for Conserve Wildlife Foundation of New Jersey. And for those of you who don't know who Conserve Wildlife Foundation is, we're a small nonprofit organization that's obviously based in New Jersey. And we were founded as a Friends of organization to the state's Endangered Species Program, or Endangered and Non-Game Species Program, back in the 1990s. Over that time, we've worked mainly to bring in some additional funding for the state's Endangered Species Program, but more so in more recent years, especially in the time that I've worked with them for the past 10 years, where we've kind of branched off on our own, where we do more of our own conservation projects and education outreach, to help raise awareness for endangered wildlife in New Jersey. And some of the projects that I work on are the New Jersey Osprey Project. That's where we monitor close to 700 or more ospreys throughout New Jersey, and Peregrine Falcons, where we have around 30 nesting pairs of those, and then bald eagles as well. So we have projects that range from, small little salamanders up in northern New Jersey, and up to bald eagle, and then little shorebirds like the piping plover.
My favorite little shorebirds.
Yeah, little puffballs. Yeah. But yeah, so I pretty much I've been working with endangered wildlife in New Jersey for the past 15 years. I live along the coast of New Jersey, in a small little Pinelands village called Bass River, and so most of my work is pretty much centered around the coast of New Jersey. And I guess I pretty much got started working with the Division of Fish and Wildlife, where I was a seasonal wildlife technician, and I pretty much got thrown into working with all different species of wildlife that the Division of Fish and Wildlife worked to manage, and peregrine falcons were one of those. So over the years, I've worked to help monitor and manage falcons, but more so with Conserve Wildlife Foundation now. The role that we play in their monitoring and management, I'd say has more to do with maintaining their nest structures, where, as some of them actually nest on former hacking towers that were used to reestablish them in New Jersey. And many of those are very old. So now, Conserve Wildlife Foundation, we play a role where we can fundraise and get volunteers to help rebuild those structures so that we can continue to have falcons nest at those sites. And most of those are coastal towers. I don't know. I'm going to share my screen here, and I have a little presentation that I can show you guys. So I just have to pick the right one here. Let's see.
Yeah, it takes a few minutes to figure it out. Which window is which when you're trying to share a window.
Oh yeah, well, I guess I had my browsing window full screen and it was only giving me that choice and I was like, "Wait a minute. That's not right here." So there we go. Can you guys see my presentation here? Good.
I can see it. I think
Good.
everybody else. Yep, they can.
Okay. I made it full screen too, so hopefully everyone can see it. So this is, I gave a talk last week about ospreys, and our osprey came in Barnegat Light with some other osprey camera fanatics, and I kind of just blazed right through my talk, and I'm definitely not used to talking through my computer with a little webcam. But this is a talk that I give in public as well, so hopefully after all this is over, we can meet face to face here. But yeah, so here, so I'll just talk, a little bit about, falcons. I'm sure most of you, if you've, worked with rehabbing falcons, I'm sure you probably learned about them yourselves, or you're a birder, or you're obviously a fan of wildlife, and that's why you're here. So I'll talk a little bit about them, but I'll talk more about the management of falcons in New Jersey and, their background here as well too. I'm sure falcons, are the fastest animal on planet Earth. It's no surprise when you see one in flight. They fly fast. So when you see them, obviously, it's quite a wonder to watch when they're in a stoop or a dive where they could reach speeds over 200 miles per hour. So the map here on the right hand side is pretty much where we find falcons that nest in New Jersey. I don't know if my pointer really works. Nope. Okay, good. But so pretty much, I'm like, oh, do I have a mouse where I could like show things? Nope. So pretty much, where we have falcons that nest in New Jersey are in the Palisades and up in the Meadowlands region down to the Raritan watershed down there, and then on the Atlantic coast from somewhere around like Tom's River south to Cape May, and then along the Delaware Bay shore, and pretty much those Atlantic coastal towers down there, where it says Atlantic Ocean, are pretty much on man-made towers or bridges where they now nest. And then over there on the Delaware River, there is where we have nests that pretty much line every bridge going from our state to Pennsylvania. So if you drive over any of those bridges, more than likely there's peregrines atop that bridge. So falcons, they're built for speed. So they are very streamlined, and you could just see the voracious predator in that bird right there, as that photographer doesn't know what's coming at it, and so you could just see their streamlined feather pattern there on their body and their wings, especially that leading edge of the wings, and then even their legs as well. When I look at one of them, they remind me of like a fighter jet, which of course, were designed after falcons because they also have to, reach very high speeds when they're in battle. But so falcons are pretty much dark overall. They're like a slate gray color, and they have that telltale, mustache, as we call it there, of dark feathers on their head. And then, of course, they also have that very bright cere that you see there, and then the ring around their eye as well, too. And of course, their legs too, which are bright yellow. Males, of course, are smaller than females, and their cere colors are usually much more vibrant than females as well. So that's one way to help tell a difference, just besides their size when they're in flight. But yeah, I kind of like to show these because just a couple of pictures of some of our military aircraft because we design our military aircraft, and even name them after birds of prey, like the Peregrine Falcon, and that's mainly because they can achieve these high speeds, and the same for these aircraft as well. So here in New Jersey, our falcons are non-migratory. They pretty much stay here throughout the entire year. They remain close to where they nest during the entire year as well. Even though during the non-breeding season, sometimes they do not always stay right at their nest or in their nest, but they will stay, near the structure or so say if it's a building in Elizabeth, then they'll still be perched up on that building somewhere just because there's very high demand for those nest sites. So they're there to still even defend those nest sites, from another competitor to come in and take that from them. But falcons, but otherwise, they nest pretty much in open areas like the coast, on these towers. And that's why one of the reasons that those areas were chosen for them to be reestablished, the coastal zone of New Jersey, just because they do very well in open areas, and that's usually where they forage. Many people nowadays will say, well, falcons were never on the coast to begin with, so why are they there now? Well, those nest sites were chosen because uh, it basically provided optimal prey for them to be able to forage and then hopefully reproduce and come back to nest their entire lives and then produce more young to occupy other historical nest sites like the Palisades and even the Delaware water gap up there as well. And that has happened. So the populations have come back and they've occupied those historic nest territories in those cliff areas. So, so the young falcons here in New Jersey, basically they're very tawny looking. They're brown overall, very mottled look to them. They still have that little mustache there, but the bird on the left is one who's a New Jersey, falcon species, where the other one is a tundrous one that we see here on migration. So we have our own birds that stay here year round, but then we also have birds who pass through during migration, and then some that even overwinter here. So you could just kind of see the little bit of difference in the bird on the right, where it just has more of a lighter color there, right above the cere there, in between the eyes. And that's one telltale way to identify which subspecies is which there, especially during the fall when we have lots of hatchier birds around. So as I mentioned, falcons love open areas to forage. So that's why along the coast in New Jersey, they do very well. I mean, other to say that falcons are very good at catching slow birds. And those are some of their main prey items that we see, like this unfortunate bird right here, who did not escape the clench of the falcon's talons there. I don't know if anyone already even knows what that species is, but it's a flicker. So flicker are definitely a common prey item that we see at falcon nests, and that's what that tower is, kind of blurred out there in the background. And but we kind of call them cosmopolitan predators because they'll take basically almost anything they can catch on the wing there. But definitely, like I said, take more species that are abundant and are not as fast as other birds, but we know what they eat because we find the prey remains at their nest sites as well. So, and they range from anything from shorebirds, like little semi-palmated sandpipers, to flickers like that bird there, to blackbirds, even crows, and then waterfowl as well. So falcons, I wish I had some, a great bird, even like you guys have there at Peter Run to show everybody. But they hunt on the wing, so that means that they fly up high, searching for prey, and then when they identify prey, then they go into a stoop or a dive, and then they usually hit the prey first, kind of stunning it, and then a lot of times the bird ends up falling to the ground, or before it hits the ground, the falcons usually end up grabbing it. And then in many cases, they end up even consuming it on the wing, depending on how big the prey is. If it's bigger, then obviously they land on the ground or bring it to a perch. where then they go and pluck it and then eat it. So so in different areas, that's where you can find plucking perches, usually just by looking for big clumps of feathers all around it. And it's easy to see near nest sites. And that's how you can definitely identify what prey they're eating. And the picture on the left here is a great, very highly used plucking perch up in the Palisades there, which has been photographed probably many thousands of times up there. And something we don't see as much in the middle there, or at least it's not captured as often, is a bird hunting over the open ocean, where it's probably taking birds on migration there, and they're easy pickings for a peregrine out over open water like that with no cover at all. So here in New Jersey, our falcons are monogamous. Besides staying here year-round, they mate for life. Pairs basically court in the spring, and usually the nesting season for falcons starts in March, and then egg laying usually occurs in early April. This year, I believe we had some birds start a little bit earlier just because it was a very warm winter. So, birds started earlier. So everything really is kind of, tied into the weather with many different species, including peregrines. So during the spring, what they do is the male does courtship displays, and they do each-up calls. If you ever hear on any nest cams, if we had birds at Jersey City this year, then we would have been able to watch them courting. And you can kind of see by the picture in the middle there, that's actually even from our Jersey City camera there, where they kind of bow to each other and do these each-up calls. And the male is the one who provides prey for his mate. And they copulate, multiple times in the spring, and then egg laying occurs. Falcons actually don't incubate until they have a full clutch, and usually we have around 4 eggs in New Jersey for the most part. And then the young all pretty much hatch synchronously because they don't start incubating until they lay a full clutch. So young are very close in age when we go to nest sites to go and monitor them, which enables us to basically be able to sex young, because they're all very close in age. So we could tell just by the size of them if it's a male or female. So kind of taking a step back in time here, just wanted to talk a little bit about their decline throughout North America and especially the United States. After World War II, obviously, it was a big time of building and prosperity in the United States, especially in coastal New Jersey. And that's where we heavily used DDT, which I'm sure you all know, totally, wiped out falcons east of the Mississippi. Their populations, were decimated by this, organochlorine compound. So falcons were listed federally in 1970 and then 1974 in New Jersey, and DDT was banned here in New Jersey in 1968 and then federally in 1972. And so falcons were pretty much one of the first species listed under the Endangered Species Conservation Act. And here is where we could just see where some of the historic nests for falcons were, which were pretty much in only areas where there were cliffs. We didn't have any birds nesting on man-made nesting towers or bridges or anything like that. They are cliff nesters and nest on ledges on these cliffs. So one of the goals of listing them and establishing a conservation project around them was to get them to return to these cliffs at some point. So that's where Division of Fish and Wildlife and the Endangered Species Program partnered with the Peregrine Fund. And actually, even when the work done with falcons was created, it was when the Peregrine Fund was founded. And that's where basically, eggs were, falcons were bred in captivity. And I'm sure most of you know, that we have like a mixed race of falcons here now on the eastern coast of New Jersey. And this is where these young birds were hacked into these hacking towers that you see here. And hacking is a falconry term where basically birds are raised in captivity with very little human interaction, just like you guys do right there at Cedar Run to rehab birds. So that's where the goal of this project was, to get these birds to eventually nest on these towers and then come back to mate there as adults and then produce young to occupy those cliff nest sites. So in 5 years, from 75 to 80, 68 young peregrines were hacked at these different towers. And there were 10 towers built on coastal New Jersey salt marshes. So the first wild nesting occurred for falcons in 1980. This actually happened at Edwin B. Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge, where there used to be a tower in between one of the impoundments there, and actually that was the first tower to be removed just a couple of years ago by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So I guess that shows that falcons have recovered, and we're doing a great job of managing them. But yeah, so basically all of these towers have been occupied, and the hacking program was obviously a huge success. And falcons were one of the first species to be delisted from the Endangered Species Act. The population that has nested on these towers has really been the core of our population in New Jersey, just because they're one of the sites where they could be most successful, on these towers that are designed and built specifically for them. So otherwise, after we had birds nesting on towers throughout coastal New Jersey, we started to see birds turn up in urban nest sites. And this is another big step in the right direction here, because as you can imagine, these tall buildings, like the picture on the right here, is in Atlantic City, at the former Hilton, where we've had nesting there since 1987, and on the penthouse floor, nonetheless. So they even have their own butlers and servants up there watching after them as well. Which is great for us. And then Jersey City as well. So Jersey City, these birds have been here for the past 20 years. Well, I guess 19 years, because this year there was no birds there. If anyone has watched our Jersey City Falcon Cam, you've seen what happened there this year after what occurred last year, which was where window washers went up on the roof when we had birds who were almost ready to fledge, and then were kind of pushed off the nest just by that human disturbance. So we don't really know why they didn't come back this year. It's a big question mark. We believe that there probably was some turnover, with either the male or the female at the nest site, and either one of those birds has just been spooked from going back up there. And we believe they're somewhere. So they're somewhere in Jersey City nesting, and we just don't know where. And of course, the whole coronavirus hasn't really helped with being able to find where they're nesting, because many of those buildings up there with offices have been empty. So they would have been where people were watching them on like a ledge of a rooftop or something, and would have definitely notified us. So what we do to manage falcons, and this is a lot of what I do, especially down here along the coast of New Jersey. So during the non-breeding season, we go out to these towers and maintain them. And that pretty much means, we go out and just inspect them and make sure that they're all in good condition. We clean out, prey remains and fecal matter from inside the igloo that you've seen in some of the other pictures on top of them where they nest, which is usually in like some pea gravel in a shallow depression. Now, basically, these towers, though, are getting to be the age of, around like 30, 35 years old. So they're needing to be replaced. So you could just imagine, building these structures. It's not an easy task. We just built a whole new platform on a tower this past fall. And it was a big job, but we did it in a day. But we definitely had help from Forest Fire Service, which used their helicopter to transport all the lumber out there, which was a huge help. So otherwise, what we do during the breeding season then is we go out to these nest sites, usually in April, and then May and June to go out and check for incubation. And that's when we install a spy cam at nests to be able to identify the adults by their leg bands. And here is just a little snapshot of our little spy cam that we use inside these nests, and you could see a picture of it right there on the right hand side with some eggs in the background. And this is motion activated. It's not a very high res camera, so you won't get anything that's going to be published on Nat Geo or even anything on YouTube. The videos are pretty low quality, but they at least enable us to be able to determine the identification of those birds by their bands, because pretty much most falcons nesting in New Jersey are banded, and most young produced in nests throughout the tri-state region here are banded as well too. So and this just pretty much enables us to be able to track these birds, determine who's who, how long they've been nesting at these nest sites, what the turnover rate is at nests, and so on and so forth. So when we go to nests, we check for hatching, and we try to time our visits right around when we think the young are hatching. And this was a picture from a couple years ago when I actually visited one nest when the chick was actually hatching right when I got there, and that was the first time I've ever seen that. And I just had to get a picture of that. And I love looking at this, where you could just look at those baby talons. Are so innocent, and they don't look very sharp, but when they get to be an adult, they're ridiculously sharp. So here's a picture of a nest site with me climbing up it. So this is when we go back to band them. Usually this happens in late May and early June. And these chicks here, they're probably right around like 4 weeks old. And this is usually when we want to band them, when they're still kind of like babies and they don't want to bite you or foot you. When they get to be a little bit older than that, like 5, 6 weeks, then they're much more much more like an adult, and want to try and get away from you and everything. So when we're at nests, and when we go to band the young, we're also looking for certain things here, like their overall body condition and health, to be able to treat them as well. At urban nest sites, we treat them for trichomoniasis, so they get antibiotics, and that's a pigeon-borne disease. But at some of our coastal towers, we've had issues with some parasitic flies, where they're wingless flies, and they're kind of like a chewing lice, and they feed on their feathers. As you can see, they're underneath their wing, and the birds can kind of get a lot of irritation, as you can see, just with the red skin there underneath their wing. And then so what we do to treat that is we use like basically like an insecticide spray that's avian friendly. It's like a pyrethrin based spray to kind of treat those areas like that. And then sometimes we call it like a trip to the day spa for peregrines. We might put a little aloe on there to help kind of cool their skin. And a lot of the dark stuff on there is blood or fecal matter from the fly, so we clean that off and everything. Because in some cases with young birds, when they're very small, we do believe that this parasitic fly can actually kill them when they're very weak and very small like that. But that bird was at no risk of dying at that age. So when we're at nests, the adults, you can only imagine, they aren't happy. So what they do is fly around and call and dive bomb us. Some birds do get closer than others. And you can see this bird, though, is banded as well. And this is just another opportunity for us to be able to try and identify them if we didn't with the spy cam. And I actually prefer using, because I have a pretty fast camera, digital SLR with a long lens that I can use to take pictures of them, like this one, where we could actually read the leg bands. And then, I don't have to go back there lugging a 20-pound battery and a pelican case over a 15-foot wide ditch on a ladder, I could just walk out there with my camera and get some photos when we go out to band. And then we could also identify those birds. I much prefer that. So then here's just another picture of a young bird, and this is when we were there to band, and this is when they're all cute and fuzzy and downy, and don't want to rip your eyeballs out. So the banding that we do, these birds get both a federal band, which is issued to us by the bird banding lab, and that's a black band for New Jersey. Other states use silver federal bands. So the black, they just get anodized to tell the difference between New Jersey Falcons and, say, New York or Pennsylvania Falcons, just by the color of that federal band. And then pretty much, Eastern states who have falcons nesting all use a bicolor auxiliary band, so that we can determine them or who that is just by reading that band. And those are called field readable bands, so that you could actually read the band when they're still alive. And instead in hand, where a lot with federal bands, you're actually you have to have that band in hand to be able to read it. All right, so in New Jersey, we have falcons nesting pretty much throughout the entire state, and a lot of those are on towers, as you can see here, which I already kind of talked about. Slowly over time, we've been removing nest sites on towers, and they've been relocated. This has happened at the site on the left. This is a water tower that's located at Bayside State Prison along the Delaware Bay shore. And that replaced a nest that used to be on a tower that was close, very close to the Delaware Bay shore, and prime foraging grounds for shorebirds like red knots in the spring. So to help try and prevent that pressure that falcons might put on shorebirds in the spring, we moved the nests. Well, actually, we just took away the nest box from the tower on the coast, and then put up a new nest box on this water tower. And it's kind of one of those things where you don't really know if it's going to work until you do it. Some people ask like, "Oh, how did you get them to nest there?" It's like, well, we didn't. We just built them a something where they would like to nest in, with some nice gravel, which is like some pea gravel, and and you just hope that they go there, and it's worked out in multiple different locations where we've done this to relocate birds. And I could see this as being something that we're going to continue to do to get these birds off of these coastal towers like this over time. Bridges. So we, like I mentioned earlier as well, pretty much, as you could see there, every bridge going at least from New Jersey to PA has peregrine falcons that nest on it. And all of them between New Jersey and New York as well have nests. And then we also have a few along the coast of New Jersey. One in particular used to be located on the Route 72 Causeway Bridge going to Long Beach Island. And that's actually where it was found during construction of the bridge, where contractors probably were wondering why these falcons were around. Well, when they started working on the bridge, they discovered a nest with eggs. So what we did was, of course, monitor the nest site, and this whole bridge was being replaced, so we needed to get the falcons off the bridge. So what we did was we worked with New Jersey Department of Transportation and built a tower for them away from the bridge, so it wouldn't interfere with that. And again, this was the same thing where we just built a tower and put up the igloo up there and filled it with gravel, and you pretty much just wait and watch. And they took to the nest site, that next year. So and here's the young bird, or one of them, from that nest that next year, where then it was banded by us, and there's some of our partners with NJDOT. And we've actually used that site as well, just because we have a great volunteer who monitors it to be able to foster birds. So this is where we've just gotten other falcons from other nest sites, and some in Philadelphia or Delaware or other New Jersey locations where once they fledge, sometimes they can't be put back in the nest just because of access. This is one where we can easily go walk to this nest and put these young birds up there, and then then one of our volunteers watches them as well to be able to kind of see what happens. And I could say from doing that, you'll never see somebody dunking like a fully fledged and flighted juvenile falcon in a bucket of water, so that it can't fly away after you put it up at a nest. I could say it's one of the most interesting things I've ever done, but it worked. So we also have birds that nest on buildings, like I mentioned before. So we have birds that nest in Atlantic City, on the Hilton there, or the Atlantic Club, and then up in Jersey City at 101 Hudson Street. And then we have another nest in Elizabeth. And, we probably have more birds nesting at some other urban sites on buildings, but it's just one of those things where sometimes we don't have enough volunteers to actually go out and monitor them. There was a couple years ago where we had some birds nesting just in a flower pot on a condo balcony in Wildwood Crest. And during this time, especially with coronavirus, many office buildings closed, we could have some falcons, and even where our Jersey City birds went, possibly on another building up in Jersey City this year. And lastly here, of course, we have birds back on the cliffs. 2003 was the first year we had birds back on these cliff nest sites up in the Palisades. And, we have 7 territories up there where we have birds that nest, primarily, all of these cliffs are east facing, so they're very vulnerable to nor'easters in the spring. So they usually don't do as well as coastal sites, but during the summer months and, early June and late May is when we go and bandit those nest sites as well. And you could just see we're not using ladders, we're actually rappelling there and going down and banding those young on these cliffside ledges, like right here as well. Where this is this is the ultimate goal of the project, to see more birds nesting in these natural nest sites like this. And that was the purpose of those towers that we have on the coast. So in here, you can just see all the different locations of the nest sites along the Palisades. One of the best places to go to look out for them or to see falcons up there along the cliffs is at State Line Lookout. So if any of you want to go up there and go and look at some falcons up there, that's the place to go. So last year we had 33 active nests in New Jersey. They produced 78 young who fledged. And the productivity rate was pretty high. It was higher than the year before, and at 2 young per active known outcome nest, which is very high. So that's definitely more than twice what's needed to sustain the population. So we're definitely going to continue to see falcons continue to thrive in New Jersey and do well. So we banned a certain percentage of those, usually not all of them, just because it's hard to get to all the cliff nest sites, especially before they fledge. Sometimes it's hard to even know what's going on the cliff sites because the nest sites are so remote and sometimes very cryptic to even look at. But we banded 52 young last year. And like I said earlier, as well, the towers and buildings there continue just to be, the core of the population in New Jersey. So here's just a chart where you can just see, how falcons have kind of, recovered over the years and have done, throughout the state and on different structures. So you can kind of, again, see the same thing where the nests on towers, which is the dark blue line, is, much more representative of the statewide population. And then the least for those that nest on the cliffs, which is the other dark bar, or I guess that's a blue color on top there too. So for monitoring falcons in the future, one of the things that we're really looking closely at is contaminants. Every year we do find birds who get contaminated with lead. So when we do bandit nests, we also collect blood samples from different nest sites. So that's just a way for us to be able to determine, where these heavy metals are found and what sort of role they're playing in the life history of falcons in New Jersey. So you know, and seeing a lead poisoned bird is not a pleasant one as well. And we've seen that even on some nest cams in New Jersey, like one on Palmyra Cove last year had lead poisoning, which was not good. And another one at that coastal tower by the Route 72 Causeway Bridge, we believe had lead poisoning as well too, because we took blood from him and was only male at that nest site, and he had very high levels of lead, and he just totally disappeared. We don't even know exactly what happened to him, but he did not. Right after he fledged, he just disappeared. So that's where we kind of think he just went crazy, and more than likely from the lead. And actually, it was just last week too. So not a not a falcon, but we had there was an osprey who I banded several years ago. It was 2013, I believe, who was found wrapped in monofilament in Cape May Harbor. She was an adult. I banded her as an adult and released her. Well, she was recovered this spring down in Cape May. And it was kind of weird because she was just seen, was very lethargic along the side of the Garden State Parkway. She evaded someone trying to go and capture her to bring her to a rehabilitator. And then I believe it was like a week later, she was found dead. And we know, so she was banded, and that was the bird that I banded. And then so blood work was done on her, and her mercury levels were like 3 times the normal level. Or what would have been in range, to see in a normal osprey. So it was just crazy to see how much mercury was in her blood as well, too, and no doubt that obviously, negatively affected her. So, and I'm sure it's probably the same in all raptors, where, when they're at the top of the food chain, they're ones who are taking very heavy loads of these heavy metals. So we definitely have to continue to monitor that. Otherwise, it's continuing to foster relationships with, companies or building owners to want to have falcons nest on their sites, because these birds are beneficial animals, where they help control pest species. But it's a fine line to be able to work with these companies, because we might see the falcons there as a positive thing, and but they might not. So it's kind of generating these good relationships with these private companies and businesses to be able to want to provide nest sites for these birds as well, like the one in Jersey City and in other places, and even Atlantic City as well. Because actually the nest site in Atlantic City, the nest has been there, for a super long amount of time, and the building's been empty for probably the past 5 years now, and it's pretty much only been like the falcons and security. And the building's been bought and sold several times with a threat of tearing down the building. And luckily now there's new building owners who are rehabilitating the old casino, and they want the falcons to stay there as well too. So that's was great news to hear this year as well. So otherwise, I mean, quarries, are another place where we have seen falcons nest, and this is happening more in the northwestern portion in New Jersey. But again, the hard part for us as a small organization and a small group is to be able to monitor these nest sites, and find these nests when they pop up, because it's just myself and another colleague, Kathy Clark, with Division of Fish and Wildlife, who monitor these nests with a small handful of volunteers. So I want to just exit out of this, and this is where I wanted to talk about. I think if I'm not still sharing my screen, then
You're showing your whole screen.
okay. Well, that's fine.
I think is it the last slide in your slideshow? I
Uh,
think that's why.
uh, oh, here, wait. Let me. Okay, I turned it off. Yeah, so I wanted to talk about the Raptor Alliance. So that's where, with my work with Division of Fish and Wildlife, over the years, we've, responded to injured bird calls throughout the entire state, and especially when we get fledgling raptors and falcons who land on the ground. And of course, we need people to go out and capture them. So that's where this past winter, this is where we kind of formed this alliance, and it's a growing alliance. So if you want to become a member, all you have to do is go to njraptors.org and sign up. Was that a good sales pitch? But yeah. So basically, this is a way for us to be able to recruit volunteers who are willing to go out to respond to injured raptor calls or downed fledgling calls. And so that's where individuals can join our network of volunteers, and also for the public to be able to go to and actually report an injured raptor. It was funny. It was just like last week. I think we got one. It wasn't through this, but it was through like a bald eagle monitor, nest monitor, where it was a good person to have this happen. She had a juvenile bald eagle land in her backyard, and it was like sitting on her back deck up in northern New Jersey. But yeah, so this is just a way for us to be able to respond to injured raptor calls, and then the other component is that the rehab facilities like you guys there at Cedar Run to be able to accept these birds then for care, and that's what our goal is, basically to try and bridge the gap of not having that many rehab facilities in South Jersey. I'm sure you're aware of that, just like I am, how that we're lacking lots of rehab facilities in the coastal zone of New Jersey.
Yeah, I think we're the only one pretty much in South Jersey, unless you count Mercer County. Um,
Yep,
and then Tri-State would be the next closest to us, but
yep,
they're in the state. So
yep,
I think a lot of us would be interested in Raptor Alliance. I will definitely send that out to everybody in the recap email. And I hope that we can share that with Mike and Lori too, and they can be in touch with you because I think they'd be really interested in it. There's a whole bunch
yep.
of questions for you.
Oh, cool.
So, Bridget would like to know what your favorite species to work with is and why.
Good question. Well, I mean, I definitely, I definitely love working with ospreys. I mean, I love just the aspect of being able to, provide nest sites for them, through woodworking, which I also love as a hobby. But I think the one that really draws a string at my heart are terrapins. So they're one species that I also work with, and there's just something about seeing this aquatic turtle who comes up on land to nest, have to cross roads, and then seeing them get hit by a car is something that is just something that I hate to see, and it's something that I've really tried to concentrate a lot of my efforts on through Conserve Wildlife to try and prevent. And we do that by using a lot of volunteers who go out and do road patrols. So I think they're one of my favorites, to work with, and I think they're also very mysterious. I mean, there's things about terrapins that we still don't even know just how. You could just imagine being covered in mud at the bottom of a saltwater ditch or in the bay, for like 6 months. I mean, how the heck do they even survive that and then still come up to nest, that next spring and cross those roads and still survive, for 15 years.
I have no idea. Okay. I know nothing about terrapins. Jim would like to know if there's any animal that you won't work with.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I try. I mean, I would work with any species. I mean, I started out, working when I was in college. I interned out west with a whole bunch of different species of waterfowl and mostly game birds, because I worked with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and even mourning doves and white pelicans. but it's definitely the raptors that I have more of a personal connection with, just because I grew up with a father who was a veterinarian who also cared for injured raptors. It was, one of those things that he did just as, someone just to provide compassionate care for raptors. And so he used to pin fractured, wing bones, and he was doing all sorts of stuff, to help them back in the 80s and 90s and everything. So I think that's where, I remember just helping hold birds for him to examine and everything, is really why I'm drawn to them.
Did you grow
Over
up
other
in
species.
Did you grow up in the state of New Jersey?
Yep.
You
Yeah, I
did.
grew up in Manahawkin, New Jersey.
Did he work with Raptor Trust then, and places like that, or with falconers? Or was he just rehabbing wild birds?
Well, okay, so he was doing more of the triage care, and he was doing more of the surgical procedures for Don Bonica with Tom's River Avian Care.
Okay. I think we know them.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, Don's
But
still a rehabber. It's just I don't know. He is taking patients, but he's definitely being careful with with
yeah,
everything going on with coronavirus, and he pretty much funds it all on his own and everything.
yeah.
Does it all right in his backyard.
Okay, so we have some more raptor, I'm sorry, peregrine specific questions that kind of were going along with your talk. So Erin, our director of education, would like to know if biologists know why peregrines pluck. I have noticed that some birds pluck and some birds don't, and even within species, like one of our adult red tails will pluck if we give her a bird, and one of them will just eat the feathers. Do you know why they might have a preference?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not really sure. I mean, yeah, I've seen some birds pluck like crazy, where they just, they get rid of the feathers, and then other birds end up just eating them as well too. And the same for falcons. I don't know if it's a personal preference, if them just not liking, like the texture of a feather. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's a mood thing, personally. But our peregrine does not always pluck, but he sometimes plucks. I know I gave him a little bit gruesome, but the head and neck of a Canada goose, and he plucked every single feather off of that goose head. But when I give him chicks, he doesn't bother. But I mean, the entire bottom of his enclosure was covered in feathers. It was insane. It was like the joy of his life to pluck all those feathers out. Um, okay, so let's see what other falcon questions we have. So, do the falcons that are born in New Jersey tend to stay in New Jersey? And do you find that most falcons that are born in a year-round region stay for life, or do they sort of disperse?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so we have falcons from New Jersey that nest in other locations, from New York to Philadelphia and down to even Delaware as well. So they do disperse, but we also have birds who are produced in New Jersey who stay in New Jersey. And so one cool thing, I'll actually even have to see if I could bring it up too. And my buddy, who I was hoping to maybe even come on here with me, actually built this for us. And it's basically it's an application called Nest Story, and it's a way. I'll see. I have to see if I could share my screen, and if I could just pick a tab. Okay, here we go. Yeah. Okay. So Nest Story. So this is something that he built. This is one of our volunteers, and this is like the admin view. So this is really cool. This is just a way for us to be able to, when I'm in the field, I can collect data at a nest. So this is where I could pick a nest site and then a time, like when I'm there, and then other people with me, and then I can collect data at the nest. But I can also look at nest sites and look at. So this is all our data for this year. So this is just where, okay, so let's see here. I'm just going to click on one just so you can kind of see here. So this is where then we have our adults, and then these are their bands. So this is where then we can go back and here, I'll just click on this bird. And this is where this is kind of cool. They really wanted to look at the genealogy of these falcons and kind of like their family tree. So where these birds are from. And see, here's even the pedigree view. So this is a male. He's 10 years old. So he's currently nesting at the water tower in Atlantic City. But he originated from the Forsyth National Wildlife Refuge. I don't know if you could see that, but that's what that is.
Mhm.
I guess we could, yeah, okay, we
Yeah,
can
we
kind
can
of see
see
it.
it.
The map's small. Yep. I guess this is more meant for like your phone or whatever if you're in the field or something. So I'm going to just see. So the pedigree view. See, here we go. This is when it gets really cool. I mean, I never really even have done this. So kind of how our volunteer Jim built this is a way to look at the pedigree and the family history of these falcons that are banded. So uh, this bird here. So these are his. So he was born in Oceanville. So these are his siblings, and then these are his parents from 2010. And then it's pretty cool. Like I can, then we can see their parents and then their grandparents. And then so that's where we then can go back and click on these birds and then go and see. This is going way back though, so we don't have data going back that far. But then this is where if we would have other birds from other states, we would be able to see that as well. So this is just a really cool way to be able to view that data. And if anyone is like a real data scientist, then they would probably love this.
I think we all love this. We're all like commenting that it's wonderful.
I mean, I've never really even dug into the pedigree too much to go and look at that, but it is really cool, to be able to see that side of it. And I can do this for pretty much almost any nest. That was just the one that I picked that was on the Atlantic City water tower. Here's the one. This is the tower. This nest has the adults of this nest have a cool history. So I'll click on her. I know the female. So I'll click on her band report. And this is the bird who originated at the flower pot. So her name is Joe Dirt because she was born from a flower pot. So we're gonna go look at her pedigree. So this is where it'll get neat. So Joe Dirt is 82 AN, and yeah, so her mother, and we don't know. I guess we don't know her history, but yeah, so she nested in a flower pot in Wildwood Crest, and then produced Joe Dirt. And then if we go back, yeah, then we can see. I guess. Oh yeah. So then that's below here. So now we can see their young that are produced this year, and it looks like not even all the data is in there yet because we banded more than that. So those or none of the young are in here yet. And then but there's young going back. But then this is last year, and you could even just see all these other ones. They didn't produce all these young. Some of them were young that we fostered there. And then again here, this is the first year of this nest, and then this is when it was still they were on the bridge as well. So pretty cool to be able to use this. So and then data views right here. Yeah, 33 nests, 34 pairs. Any other questions?
Yeah, you have a few more. Sorry. You have a very
Oh,
engaged
good. You can see me
group
too.
here. Okay. So Bridget would like to know what you think some of the unique challenges are working with wild falcons.
I'd say one of the biggest challenges is probably working with private partners. I mean, we basically saw what happened, or if you didn't see, one thing that happened last year in Jersey City was where it was like a long-standing nest that was occupied, and window washers went up on the roof when the young were just about ready to fledge. It's like that time when they're on the ledge, they're ready to go, but they can't fly yet, so they're jumping and hopping and they're ready to go. And then that's when the window washers went out there and had no idea and forced those birds off the building. And of course, put their lives at risk. And I think the fine line is protecting the birds, but also not impacting the business or the building owners so that they can't, do what they need to do to maintain the building. I mean, that's the hard part is, any building that has a roof where there's a nest on it, then they definitely need to do roof work at some point, or get up on the roof, to access some type of component that's up there, like HVAC or their lights or something. So I think that's one of the most challenging things, especially moving forward. I mean, one of the things that we've really looked, uh, you know, towards doing more of is migrating away from some of the towers on the salt marshes to buildings, or other structures that they can nest on, and a lot of those are even water towers. But pretty much all water towers need to be painted at some point too. So it's a real delicate balance there to be able to successfully have a nesting pair at a site that's privately owned or managed, and then still protect those birds, and uh, allow the building managers to continue what they need to do with the site.
Yeah, I would imagine that that's really challenging. I mean, even just working with private homeowners to get them to respect small songbird nests is challenging. So I would imagine
Yeah.
something that's far more dangerous, or, you know, in their minds destructive or whatever, especially it's bringing prey items up and stuff. They probably think it's a horrible nuisance. Um, I have a personal
Yep.
question. Did the Union County Peregrines fledge? I didn't get a chance to check the nest cam this week.
I don't think they fledged yet, but yeah, all of them have been up there, and perching very close to the ledge, so they're getting there. I think that they're probably even due this week, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to start being off camera more, or up on some of those railings up on the building there as well.
Cool. I know I like that's actually my favorite of the Falcon
Mhm.
games. I watched that one faithfully for like 2 years. Um, our
Yep.
our resident peregrine isn't banded. Erin would like to know if you think she was likely migrating when she was injured and brought here. I think she's been here. Artemis has been here 14 years, something like
Mm.
that. So you
Wow.
think, yeah.
Probably. I mean, we still see unbanded falcons at certain
Mhm.
nest sites, and one of the things, but it could have been a migrating bird for sure too, because they still get some down in Cape May as well too during migration, and they're not banded. But one of the things, like I mentioned as well, is it's just getting to be more difficult for us as a small little group who manage falcons to be able to track every single nest. I mean, it was just like it was last year as well. We had a new nest that was found underneath the Cape May Bridge. So that was right inside the Cape May Inlet, that goes to Wildwood. We had no idea falcons were even nesting there until we heard from like a birding, tour boat, who goes out through the inlet there,
Oh,
that there were falcons nesting underneath the bridge, and I think they were like 4 or 5 feet above the water in like a pile of, rubble and rusty steel from the bridge. So they're kind of almost like, I feel like they're almost like, or other secretive, raptors that nest like barn owls and stuff, inside cavities or ledges where you don't even know they're there until you find, prey remains, or a bird on the ground or something. I mean, owls are even harder because they're nocturnal like that, though. So falcons. I mean, and when you hear a falcon call, you know it. But even there was another incident that happened 2 years ago where it was like the Goethals Bridge, where there was a pair nesting in the bridge, and they didn't know it until they started to tear down the bridge, and they literally pulled down a beam that had hatchlings inside the beam.
I remember
Uh,
that. Yeah.
Yeah, because those are the birds that we put in the Jersey City nest that year, because the one chick from that nest, Junior, wasn't doing that good, so we fostered him into another nest. This year, I'm happy, has been pretty quiet with fostering. I'm saying that, and I should knock on some wood here, because every year we have to like usually it's like crazy fostering. Like, okay, we have birds from this nest that need to go to this nest, and we have to link up the ages, and And
Right.
that's where that database like Nestory like that is a way for us to be able to look at that data real quick and say, oh, okay, these guys are, we know they're 2 weeks old or they're 3 weeks old, to be able to go and put those young in those nests just to try and match up the ages of the young.
We do that with a lot of different animals around here too.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a siblicide? I don't think that's a word, but that's the word Bridget came up with in the nest. Do the babies hurt or
Yeah,
kill each other?
occasionally we see that where we see brood reduction. Yeah, I mean, we haven't really documented it too much, but it definitely happens. I mean, it happens more so when there's prey shortages. But I think for the most part, falcons, they pretty much, most locations along the coast, there's not much in the form of a shortage of prey. I mean, like we might see in owls where that happens, but a lot of times, owls nest in areas where there is only high densities of prey. And the same with ospreys. I mean, they exhibit it as well, but I've never really seen it too much in New Jersey as well. I think it's just in areas where there might be more food stress, and possibly even in the Arctic. We might see it
Right.
more. If it's like a bad year for any kind of shorebirds that nest up there, that might be prey for a peregrine.
I know I've seen that in kestrel nest boxes, or at least stuff that's been recorded and placed on maybe on YouTube. I've seen it or something, but
Yep.
where kestrels will kill a whole clutch because there's no food or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been nests where I go, right after hatching, and there's four young, and then we return to band, and there's only two.
Right.
So it happens.
Yeah. Are there areas where you tend to see more lead issues around the state? Is it
Yeah,
particular regions?
yeah, I'm not sure exactly where we've had real spikes. I mean, you would think it would be mostly urban areas, but the site that I kind of talked about on the Route 72 Causeway Bridge going to Long Beach Island was a site where the male last year had very high levels of lead, and it was pretty much in a, you know, I mean, it's a developed area, but it's not like, somewhere where you would think they would be eating lead contaminated prey. I mean, it could have just been something where if they did like, forage on, a certain prey item and it had lead shot in it,
Yeah.
more than likely that's probably where it came from, unfortunately.
Will peregrines forage? I know that red tails will eat carrion here and there if it's not too far gone. I didn't know if peregrines would do that or not, though.
No, I mean, they usually don't. They take prey live, but who knows if,
Right.
if whatever, say somebody shot a dove or something with a pellet gun, I guess, and then it
Yeah.
has a pellet stuck in it and it
Or
didn't
a
kill it, and then
yeah.
they eat it.
Or a
So,
bird ate a piece of fish or a fish that had a hook in it or something. No, we don't get
right.
many birds with hooks at our place, but we don't get too many of the shore birds, so we don't.
Hmm.
You have just a couple questions left, and then you're free. Um,
Yeah.
Rachel, who is one of our full-time educators, would like to know if you have any issues with people doing any rock climbing in the areas where there's cliff nests. I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to rock climb in the Palisades, just from growing up there and
Hmm.
hiking a lot as a kid. I don't remember that going on, but I could be wrong. But,
Yeah, and, I don't think we've ever had any issues with rock climbers up there, and you might be right. I'm not exactly sure of all the restrictions and or policies in the Palisades Interstate Park,
yeah,
but I've never seen people actively rock climbing or anything. It's more we've had issues with photographers actually, though.
yeah,
In this day and age, everybody's a photographer with the cell phone in their pocket and with all these social media sites like Instagram or whatever, I mean, they post pictures there and they want to get lots of likes, and some of them, they go off of the trail and into areas where they're not supposed to when they have caused issues in the past just with trying to approach nests during the wrong time of year. I mean,
yeah.
there's certain times of year when it's not a big deal when they don't have young or anything, especially ones that are ready to fledge. But so those are the only issues we've really had at those sites. I mean, I'm sure some other areas they might have issues where there actually is rock climbing, But I think they probably just closed those areas
Yeah.
in general, though, just to try and prevent that. But who knows? There might be some rogue rock climbers out there climbing at night or something.
I've definitely seen that plucking site that you showed the picture of up in the
Hmm.
Palisades. I've seen photos of that branch
Yeah,
900.
that's probably from State Line Lookout because that's where most of them go
Mm.
because you're allowed to go there.
I
And
see,
you,
and I never knew that that's where that was. I just kind of thought it was up around there because, where else are there rocky cliffs in New Jersey? But yeah, I've definitely seen that in a lot of places. And I mean, I know that people who I have done the giant stairs there a million times, and people go off the trail and end up breaking their ankles and having to get rescued by the Coast Guard. So the Palisades is a dicey place to be going off trail and there's copperheads under those rocks too. So
oh yeah,
yeah.
yep, yeah,
So
and there's lots of poison ivy too. It's crazy when you look around like off trail and it's just like poison ivy all over the place.
yeah. Okay. And then the last two questions I saved for last because they're a little bit more general. Is there cooperation between the states on the banding and monitoring of the peregrine populations? And Julie says she assumes the trends in different areas could be important to assess the overall health of the peregrine population. So, yeah,
Hmm.
do you work between states with Pennsylvania, New York, Connecticut?
Yep. Yeah, so New Jersey, definitely partners with Pennsylvania, especially around Philadelphia, where there's lots of nesting pairs, and then New York, and especially New York City, and and then also Maryland and Delaware as well too, where we have nests in like Wilmington. But yeah, so they all kind of partner and share information, especially when you get different birds from like here nesting there, they report back to us. So there's definitely that kind of interagency cooperation between all of us for sure.
Okay. And I saved this question for last because I think it's a really great question that a lot of people in this meeting would like to know more about. This one is from Amber. She asks, how can we support these conservation efforts? And also, can you offer any advice for entering the wildlife conservation field as a career? She is a recent college graduate, so I think this is very important for her.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's plenty of opportunities to get out there and volunteer, but during this time with like a global pandemic, it's been tough for all of us. I'm sure you guys know too at Cedar Run there. But I would definitely say to still, reach out to those, working in the fields like myself or Kathy Clark. I mean, we're always looking for volunteers. I mean, the falcon season's pretty much ending, but it doesn't mean there still isn't work with other species, to get involved with for sure. And I kind of mentioned, well, I talked about the Raptor Alliance as well, and that's one where we're definitely going to be needing more people, to kind of get involved, and those who especially, have some experience handling raptors or responding to injured raptor calls, or even fledgling raptors, to really help kind of, ensure those birds get the help that they need in a timely manner as well. Because that's always the hard part is connecting the dots between, the finder and then the rehab facility.
And before we go, I just wanted to note that Erin Rounds, our Director of Education, did an internship at Forsyth 10 years ago, and she did actually work with you a little bit when she was down there. I think maybe it was just for a day or so. She could probably fill us in if she wants to, but I thought that was an interesting tidbit. So she remembers you from back then. So she was an education intern, a little different.
Nice. Yeah.
She says she helped banding ospreys. So.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't banded down. Maybe that was the last time I banded down there. It's been a while. I just heard from somebody, one of my volunteers who was just driving around Wildlife Drive there and was concerned about an osprey nest that fell down. And I said, "Oh, I would think that maybe I would have heard about it."
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, maybe the windstorm did it, and it appears it's a new nest on the ground. It's a ground nest down there on like a dock or something like that washed up. So pretty cool. But
Yeah, that's neat.
see,
Yeah,
that's just,
I was
I
out there
mean,
a month and a half ago, and there were ospreys just chilling out everywhere.
yep,
Yeah. Okay, awesome. I have no more questions. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but I'm going to share an email with the links to everything and encourage our volunteers to volunteer with you. And hopefully we can link you up with our wildlife hospital directors, because I'm sure that we would love any and all assistance in
yeah,
getting injured raptors more safely to wildlife rehab, whether it's us or somebody else.
yeah,
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate your time. This is
yep.
super informative. I might be bothering you to volunteer. I'm sure Amber might be.
That's fine. Yeah, you can sign up to be a volunteer right on njraptors.org right now, or shoot me an email,
Yeah.
which you could find my contact info on conservewildlifenj.org. So yeah, thanks a lot for having me, and it's a lot
Thank
of
you.
fun.
Yeah. Have a wonderful night, and good luck with the rest of the season and all of your field work. Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yep.